The snowstorm outside had muffled every sound on Michigan Avenue. Cars moved slowly, their headlights cutting through a dense white haze. Inside, however, apartment 306 was holding a silence that felt unnatural, suffocating. Detective John pushed the door open with a gloved hand. The lock had been forced from the outside by the forensic team, but otherwise the place looked untouched. A faint draft carried the metallic smell of blood, the kind that clung to your nostrils, making it impossible to forget. The living room was modestly furnished, an old sofa with torn fabric, a small lamp still glowing weakly in the corner, and family photographs hanging unevenly on the wall. But John's eyes went straight to the floor. Hannah Carter lay sprawled across the cream-colored rug, her auburn hair splayed like a halo gone wrong. A crimson pool spread slowly from beneath her chest, soaking into the fibers. Her eyes, glassy and wide open, seemed to plead silently for someone to finish the story she couldn't. John crouched beside the body, his heart steady but his mind racing. There were no signs of forced entry from the door or windows. Everything was intact, locked from the inside. How could anyone have walked in, killed her, and left without leaving a trace? On the nightstand, just a few feet away, something caught his eye, a scrap of torn paper, smeared with blood, stuck to the wood as though Hannah's hand had forced it there in her final moments. He carefully lifted it with tweezers. 2 words stared back at him. She knew. The forensics team moved quietly around John, snapping photographs and collecting samples. Every click of the camera, every rustle of a glove, felt amplified in the tense silence. John's gaze drifted beneath the bed, where the edge of something leather-bound peeked out. He reached for it, pulling out a diary worn with use, its cover cracked and pages yellowed. He flipped through the entries slowly. Most of it was routine complaints about work, notes about groceries, fragments of personal reflections. But then, on the very last page, written in frantic, jagged strokes, he found words that made his chest tighten. If something happens to me, remember it won't be a stranger. It will be someone close. I know everything now. H.C. At the very bottom of the page, scribbled hastily as though in panic, were 2 letters. A.K. Who the hell is A.K.? He muttered under his breath. Just then, Officer Green, one of his juniors, entered the room. Detective, neighbors are waiting outside for questioning. Want me to bring them in one by one? John nodded, slipping the diary into an evidence bag. His eyes lingered on Hannah's lifeless form for a moment longer before he stood up. Whoever A.K. was, Hannah had believed him dangerous enough to fear for her life, and John was beginning to fear that she was right. The hallway outside apartment 306 was crowded with curious neighbors, their hushed voices clashing in nervous tones. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with every movement. Detective John stepped out, his notepad in hand, his eyes scanning the crowd like a hunter among startled deer. Mrs. Langley from 304 was the first to speak, her robe clutched tight around her frail body. I heard something last night, she whispered, her voice trembling. Footsteps past midnight. Heavy, hurried footsteps, back and forth, like someone pacing. John jotted it down. Did you open your door? She shook her head violently. No, detective. I was too scared. I thought maybe it was just the building creaking again. But then I heard a faint thud, like something falling. Next was Mr. Daniels, a tall man with bald head who lived 2 floors up. His tone was steadier, but his eyes betrayed unease. I saw her 3 nights ago, Hannah. She was near the elevator, arguing with a man. Tall, wore a dark jacket. His face was shadowed. But the way she spoke, she looked terrified. John leaned closer. Did you hear what they argued about? Daniels frowned, digging into memory. No words I could make out, but she said something like, "You can't threaten me forever." The words lingered in the hallway like smoke. Others described Hannah as kind, gentle, always smiling at children in the hall. But in recent weeks, she had been withdrawn, hurried, her shoulders hunched as though she carried a weight no one else could see. John snapped his notebook shut, his instincts sharpening. Fear doesn't appear out of nowhere. Fear is planted, watered, and eventually it grows wild. And Hannah Carter had been living inside that shadow. Night fell heavy over the city, wrapping the streets in icy silence. John returned to apartment 306 alone, the police tape fluttering against the door like a warning he chose to ignore. Inside, the air was colder than before. Not just the absence of heat, it was a suffocating stillness, as though the apartment itself was holding back a secret. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, tracing over the stained carpet, the overturned lamp, the diary sealed in an evidence bag. He crouched near the nightstand, staring again at the scrap of paper with its haunting words. She knew. His mind replayed the last diary entry over and over, the name AK, burning at the edge of his thoughts. Then it came. 3 soft knocks. John froze, his breath misting in the cold air. He turned sharply toward the sound. Not the front door. The knocks had come from inside the bedroom closet. Slowly, gun drawn, he crept across the floor, each step measured. His heartbeat echoed louder than his footsteps. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but his throat felt tight. Silence. Then, another 3 knocks. He reached the closet, his hand hovering over the handle. The wood was cold to the touch. For a moment, he imagined Hannah's trembling hand reaching for the same door, hiding, pleading. John yanked it open. Empty. The beam of his flashlight swept across bare hangers and boxes stacked neatly. But then he saw it, faint marks scratched into the wooden wall inside the closet. He leaned closer, the letters shallow but clear. AK. Morning brought no relief. Snow still pressed heavy against the city, muting every sound. But John's mind buzzed louder than any storm. He sat in the surveillance room, watching grainy footage from the building's security cameras. At 11:47 p.m., minutes before Hannah's estimated time of death, a figure appeared in the hallway outside apartment 306. The man wore a cap, pulled low to shadow his face. His coat was thick, but as he turned toward the elevator, John's eyes caught on a detail stitched across the jacket's chest pocket. Keller Industries. John leaned back in his chair, muttering under his breath. A.K. Alex Keller. The name fit like a cruel joke. Alex Keller, Hannah's former colleague, fired months ago after a fraud investigation. She had been a witness against him, her testimony sealing his downfall. He lost his job, his reputation, everything, and now she was dead. But something in John's gut twisted. It fit too well, too quickly. In his experience, the truth was rarely the easiest puzzle. John had barely closed his eyes when the phone rang. 2:03 a.m. He snatched it from the bedside table, his instincts already on edge. "Detective John," he answered sharply. For a moment there was only static. Then a low, distorted voice seeped through the line. "Stop digging. She already knew too much. Don't make her mistake." John sat upright, gripping the phone tighter. "Who is this?" No answer. Only silence. And then the line went dead. He sat there, staring into the darkness of his apartment. His own reflection in the window stared back, fractured by snow tapping the glass. The words lingered, echoing in his mind like a warning carved into stone. She already knew too much. Don't make her mistake. It wasn't just Hannah who had been silenced. Whoever killed her now wanted him to stop. But John was not the kind of man to stop. By dawn, John had a warrant in hand. The name Alex Keller, circled in bold ink, haunted his notes. Keller's office was tucked away in an abandoned industrial block. The warehouse smelled of rust and gasoline. Frost coated the windows, muting the thin light of day. Inside, the silence felt staged, too deliberate. John's flashlight beam cut across stacks of shredded documents. half-burned ledgers and metal bins. Evidence of a desperate man trying to erase his trail. Then, he saw it. Pinned to the far wall was a photograph. Hannah Carter. Her face circled in thick red ink. John's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his instincts screaming. That's when he heard a floorboard creaking behind him. He spun, gun raised. The beam of his flashlight swung wildly across empty space. Nothing. Then, a faint red blink caught his eye above the desk. A tiny light, flashing in steady rhythm. A camera. Hidden. Someone was watching him. And not just watching, they knew he was here. That evening, John returned to apartment 306. The place felt different now, alive with something he couldn't name. The air pressed heavy against his chest, as though the walls themselves were holding back a secret. He sat on the couch, staring at the crime scene photos. His eyes kept drifting back to the blood-stained scrap of paper. She knew. Something gnawed at him. He pulled the photo closer, studying the handwriting. It wasn't shaky from fear, it was careful, controlled, too deliberate. John dug into his bag, pulling out his own notebook. He flipped through his scribbled notes, stopping dead when his eyes caught the resemblance. The strokes, the slant, the pressure of the pen. It matched. Perfectly. The note wasn't Hannah's. It had been forged. By someone who had studied his own handwriting. John's stomach sank. Whoever orchestrated this had planned to frame him from the very beginning. A sound pulled him from his thoughts. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. They echoed from the apartment door. John's hand slid to his gun. "Who's there?" he called, his voice sharp in the silence. A pause. Then a calm, steady voice on the other side. "Detective John, we need to talk. About what you really know." The lights flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced along the blood-stained rug. The hallway outside fell into an unnatural silence. John gripped his gun tighter, his pulse thundering. He stepped toward the door, and in that moment, apartment 306 kept its final secret, waiting to consume the next soul bold enough to open it.